A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, illustrated by Jim Kay. A Monster Calls. A monster showed up just after midnight, as they do. Connor was awake when it came. He had a nightmare. Well, not a nightmare exactly. The nightmare. The one he'd been having a lot lately. The one with the darkness and the wind and the screaming. The one with the darkness that came into his room. The one with the hands slipping from his grasp, and no matter how hard he tried to hold on. The one that always ended with, "Go away," Connor whispered into the darkness of his bedroom, trying to push the nightmare back, not letting it follow him into the world of wakening. Go away now. He glanced over at the clock his mom had put on his bedside table. It said 12:07. 7 minutes past midnight, which was late for a school night. Late for a Sunday, certainly. He told no one about the nightmare, not his mom, not his grandma, and certainly no one at school. No, no one should know about this nightmare. Connor blinked groggily at his room, and then frowned. There was something he was missing. He sat up in bed, waking a bit more. The nightmare was slipping from him, but there was something he couldn't put his finger on. Something different this time. He listened, straining against the silence, but all he could hear was the quiet house around him, the occasional tick-tock, tick-tock of the clock downstairs, and the rustle of the bedding of his mother's room next door. Nothing. And then something. Something he realized was the thing that had woken him. Someone was calling his name. Connor. He felt a rush of panic, his guts twisting. Had it followed him? Had it somehow stepped out of his nightmare and... Don't be stupid, he told himself. You're too old for monsters. And he was. He had turned 13 just last month. Monsters were for babies. Monsters were for bedwetters. Monsters were for... Connor. There it was again. Connor swallowed. It had been unusually warm for October, and he left his window open. Maybe the curtains swishing and swishing against one another in the small breeze could have sounded like Connor. All right, it wasn't the wind. It was definitely a voice, but not one he recognized. It wasn't his mother, that was for sure. It wasn't a woman's voice at all, and he wondered for a crazy moment if his dad had somehow made a surprise trip from America and arrived too late to call, and... Connor. No, no, not his dad. This voice had a quality to it, a monstrous quality, wild and untamed. And then he heard a heavy creak of wood from outside his window, as if something gigantic was stepping across the timber floor. He wanted to look out the window. He didn't want to look out the window, but he couldn't stop from doing so. Out there, Connor could see the great yew tree that rose from the center of the graveyard, a tree so ancient it almost seemed to be made of the same stone as the church. He only knew it was a yew because his mother had told him, first when he was little to make sure he didn't eat the berries, which were poisonous, and again this past year when Mom had started staring out of their kitchen window with a funny look on her face, saying, "That's a yew tree, you know?" And then he heard his name again. Connor. Like it was being whispered in both ears. "What?" said Connor, his heart thumping, suddenly impatient for whatever was going to happen. A cloud moved in front of the moon, and the whole landscape darkened, and there was a whoosh of wind rushing down the hill into his room, billowing the curtains. He heard the creaking, the cracking of the wood again, groaning like a living thing, like a hungry stomach of the world growling for a meal. And then the cloud passed, and the moon shone again on the yew tree, which now stood firmly in the middle of his backyard. And here was the monster. As Connor watched, the uppermost branches of the tree gathered themselves together into a great and terrible face, shimmering into a mouth and nose and even eyes peering back at him. Other branches twisted around one another, always creaking, always groaning, until they formed two long arms and a second leg down beside the main trunk. The rest of the tree gathered itself into a spine, and then a torso, the thin, needle-like leaves weaving together to make a green, furry skin that moved and breathed as if it were muscles and lungs underneath. Already taller than Connor's window, the monster grew wider and brought itself together, filling out into a powerful shape, one that looked somehow stronger, somehow mighty. It stared at Connor the whole time, and he could hear the loud, windy breathing from its mouth. It set its giant hands on either side of Connor's bedroom window, its head leering in closer, closer, until its huge eyes filled the frame. Connor gave a little moan. And then the monster spoke. "Connor O'Malley, Connor," it said. A huge gust of warm, compost-smelling earth rushed through Connor's window, blowing his hair back. Its voice rumbled low and loud with a vibration so deep Connor could feel it in his chest. It said, "I have come to get you, Connor O'Malley."